Hello, welcome to 5-Star Founder Podcast, created by founders for founders. I believe everyone you ever meet knows something you don't. Each episode features a founder from a variety of backgrounds, sectors, entrepreneurial stages with whom I hope to learn, celebrate, understand, and get a deeper insight into their world. We cover everything from what drove our founders to start their company to what keeps them awake at night, biggest regret to date, as well as their career highs and lows in their journey so far. Now, imagine for a second a super tasty snack which you can eat to your heart's desire, made with all natural ingredients, is gluten and GMO free, and has 40% less fat than the average crisp. What is this perfect snack, I hear you ask? Well, let's find out. Today, we're joined by an OG snacker and foodie, Sara Trechman, the co-founder and director of Well and Truly. She founded a company with her sister-in-law simply to solve their own problem. They loved snacking, but didn't want to pig out on junk ingredients. The idea for the business came about when they were having a drink after work at a bar in Soho, often where I usually get my best brainwaves to, I should say. Not only is Well and Truly stocked everywhere from Tesco, Sainsbury's, Amazon, Ocado, underneath the distinctive packaging, the snack is on the right side of tasty and the wrong side of unhealthy. Sara normally lives in London, but she is joining us from the Alps in France today. She studied business studies at Leeds and worked for corporate companies like so many of us founders before taking the plunge with Maria. Outside of the office, Sara can be found climbing mountains when she can. I don't mean that like metaphorically, I mean actual mountains where she happened to meet her husband, with whom she has 2 daughters with. We hope to find out more about her and also about her brand, Well and Truly. Welcome to the show, Sara.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
So the first question we want to know is, how much of a foodie are you and how do you stay in shape?
I'm a big foodie, probably an even bigger snacker, to be brutally honest. Do I have 3 regular meals a day? Definitely not. I'm probably on the sort of the 6 or 8 snacks a day person. How do I keep in shape? That's a tough one. Well, being married to a man that his whole passion in life has been dedicated to climbing mountains, he makes sure that I get outside and have regular exercise. So that's what I try and do.
I mean, in terms of, as your one myth that we have wanted to dispel was Well and Truly started in 2014, 2015, or 2016? Because according to multiple sources.
So we registered the company in 2015. And then in 2016, that was the first year that we started selling to Tesco's.
Wow. Because Tesco's were your first like big customer, right?
Yes, it was. It was the most memorable day still for me today of the whole Well and Truly journey. We had been pitching to Tesco's and to Sainsbury's. Tesco's were the one that said, actually, we want to take a risk with you guys. We're going to stock you in our stores. They had said that they were going to stock us in 300 stores. And when the order came over on an email, we were actually going into 1,000 stores.
Wow.
So this put a lot of pressure on Maria and I to make sure that our whole supply chain was set up, making sure that the packaging was delivered and the factory produced everything that we needed. And this was over Christmas, which made it even more challenging. And then the goods arrived in January in our warehouse in the UK. And in February, that's the first time we ever had seen our product on shelf. So we went from 0 stores to over 1,000 overnight.
Could you tell us like the emotional journey from having won that pitch to actually walking into your local Tesco's or maybe even, like a supermarket and just casually finding something you had worked on personally? What was that like? What the first moment you saw your product on the shelves?
We actually had a sort of watery eyes, I think, the first time we saw our product shelf. We were so proud. We couldn't believe that actually had happened. We went to one of the Tesco stores right off Piccadilly Circus. So we actually took a friend of ours who's a photographer with us, and he took some shots of us going into store and coming out of the store. We literally jumped for joy with the packs in our hands. It was just one of the best days ever. That, and also coming out of the really great meeting that we'd had with Tesco's with the buyer when she had said sort of, I think I really like what you guys are doing. I'm going to list you guys. Those two moments will be ingrained in my mind for the rest of my life.
So just going back a bit, could you tell us what is it actually like to work with a family member, like so closely? And I know there's the whole thing of never work with family, because there's a lot of things attached. Actually, because one of my cousins, he's a big model, right? And I found that he unfollowed me on Instagram. And I was like, what the hell? I took it personally. And I spoke to my mom and I said, hey, look, this guy unfollowed me. Can you make him follow me back? And it was just like these kind of things that you have to deal with, where it's a family member, and you can be so much more brutally honest with them, and so much more. There's no kind of filter, because you're family. What is it actually like to work with family? What are the good things about working with someone you're related to, and what are the bad things? And I hope you'll be honest.
Yes, definitely. Well, because Maria's not pure family, so she's my sister-in-law.
Yeah.
So she's married to my brother. So I think if I was in business, for example, with my brother, then you could definitely be really brutally honest. You could have massive arguments and it'd still be okay. When it's your sister-in-law, I think it actually adds another layer that makes it a bit more complicated, because you will spend a lot more time together than you potentially would with somebody else, because there are family commitments, or you're seeing each other over Christmas or other things. So it definitely makes it harder. In terms of the dynamic, it is more like working with a friend than with actually family, because she's not my sibling. But what we have to be really careful of is that when we do meet up for family gatherings, we don't spend the entire time talking about work, which we've definitely been guilty of in the past. And then I guess some of the nice parts of it is that my brother sort of gets involved in the business as well. He's been really helpful and insightful in sort of guiding us. My father, Maria's father as well, they've all helped us get to where we are today. So it feels from that perspective very much of a family effort. And yeah, I think those are some of the highs and lows. And I guess one of the biggest highs for me is that I could never have gone on this journey by myself, I think. Being co-founders has been one of the best decisions that we ever made. And our skill sets really complement each other. So Maria had always been in sales and I'd always been in marketing. And it's quite difficult to find people who have complementary skill sets, characters that you're going to get along with. So Maria is very much of an entertainer and extrovert, and I'm more probably on the other side, a bit more analytical. And so we really help each other through all the different challenges that we've had in building Well and Truly.
I mean, it's like kind of a serendipitous journey in a way, like but I mean, I guess you didn't meet each other before your brother was starting to go out or whatever. But how did you know, like, between the two of you, that you had, you'd want to take that plunge and go into business?
It all came back to this evening where we were in Soho, and my brother was actually with us. The three of us were all having a drink. I'd been consulting for a while. Maria had sort of decided that she wanted to leave L'Oreal, where she'd been previously. And so she had sort of started looking at products that she could potentially import into the UK. But she was really struggling to sell these products to the supermarkets because they didn't have branding or packaging that appealed to the UK consumer. Because when you look at, if you go, into supermarkets in Europe, you'll really see that within the UK, we are streams and walks above everybody else in terms of design of packaging. UK packaging always stands out whenever you're on a European shelf, because we put a lot of effort into that. And we were just chatting, and she was talking to me about the issues that she was finding, and I was just said to her, well, why don't you create your own brand? And she's like stood back and said, well, I've never done that before. And I said, well, I'll do it with you. We had a few more drinks and the decision was made. And that's when we decided to go into partnership.
In terms of like, is there a kind of, how it all started? Did you have the idea and then you worked on the brand together? Because I think from your background, you've worked with other FMCG companies before, or you worked in that kind of space.
Yeah.
How did the name Well and Truly come about?
So, on your first question, we basically decided to work as a partnership. Maria had obviously started looking at a few products that she could import from other countries into the UK, and she had found one factory that made these really delicious tortilla chips that were really low in fat. So we then went out together and visited the factory, and we decided that that was a great product to bring in. And we'd had this whole idea that we were wanting to unjunk our favorite snacks. And at
Yeah,
the time, mine were Doritos and hers were Knick Knacks.
yeah.
So we then spent another 6 months trying to find a different factory that could potentially unjunk Knick Knacks for us. And we found a partner in Italy. So that's when our first product sort of came about. In terms of the name, quite early on, we looked at other startups to see what branding we liked as a bit of a sort of a review. And there was a couple of brands that really stood out for us. And so we looked to see which agencies had designed those, the packaging and the brand. And we contacted them. And two young guys that had left one of the bigger agencies had set up a small agency. So we got in touch with them and we had a first sort of kickoff brainstorm session with them. And they helped us come up with a name well and truly.
Wow. Like one thing I wanted to go back and to be honest with you, you're the first B2C kind of founder that we've interviewed. One interesting thing that you mentioned, like we are way in the UK, we're way ahead of ahead of everyone in terms of
Yeah.
packaging, having, anyone who kind of travels around Europe or other parts of the world knows that we actually put in a lot of effort into what the stores or retail shops, even the corner shops are like laid out in a very easy to find, navigate kind of way, including things on the shelves. Why do you think that is? Like why is that? Has the bar always been set high, and to get the attention of your customer, you've got to do something truly amazing to do that? Or could you tell us a bit more about that?
I think, well, at least within London, there's quite a high percentage of entrepreneurs and startups, and I think they really push the boundaries within design. Then, obviously, London being such a sort of a big sort of city and melting pot of lots of different cultures, you've got some of the top sort of art galleries, art universities, art colleges, and I think that really drives the appreciation of whether it be packaging or paintings or design or advertising. I think I think the London and sort of, some places in the US and Australia, I think it really comes back to potentially some of the sort of Anglo-Saxon heritage in terms of having great packaging is going to really help the product sell. Whereas I think in other parts within Europe, because I'm half Portuguese, if I look at the shelves in Portugal, you have a much, much smaller number of startup brands that are actually on shelf. The brand, you'll have sort of Nestle dominating a lot of the snacking space.
Hmm.
Whereas I think the retailers in the UK are more open to accepting and giving a chance to different startups. And you can see that with sort of Sainsbury's having set up a whole sort of scheme for startup brands. So when you go into a Sainsbury's local store at the moment, you'll probably see right at the front of store maybe a 40 or 50 startup brands that have all been given space. And I've never come across that in a European country.
The thing is, I was reading this book and it was so fascinating in terms of it talked about how the UK is kind of dominated by like these major supermarkets. And because we're an island, we tend to have everything imported. And the only kind of shops that are able to kind of buy in that kind of bulk are the big, supermarket chains that we have. Do you think that they have because they have not a monopoly, but they have like a very, very dominant position within the market, they kind of force you to kind of step up your game. Because if you want to be shelved, or if you want to have, if you want to stock within these stores, you've got to have a certain type of product, which will not only appeal, but also is XYZ. Is that something you've found within your journey of navigating through the buyers of all these supermarkets?
Definitely. I mean, for us, we always knew that we wanted to go for scale. And luckily, Maria had sort of dealt with the likes of Tesco's and Sainsbury's in previous roles from a sales
Mm.
perspective. So it was always our ambition to go after those retailers first. If you want to have huge scale in the UK and you've got a product that potentially is purchased more on impulse rather than being a product that will be lend itself to subscription boxes, then you
Mm.
definitely have to be in the big five. Otherwise, you're just not going to have enough distribution points out there. If you have a product that people are happy to buy on subscription, then I would say maybe, people seem to buy lots of coffee and chocolate and some of those products, then I think you could have a purely online play. And
Mm.
over the last year, we've started to see loads of different startups really dominate that space and have really successful journeys purely online.
Yeah, because I was looking through, I was being nosy, as I always am with these things. You can purchase directly through your website. And I think with, unlike the store, there's a minimum kind of volume that you've got to purchase. Is that something that like from the sounds of it, you went the whole kind of 50 cent model, go big or go home from day
Yeah.
one, and you designed your product to be in the shelves of big supermarkets from the very beginning? And also in terms of what you've mentioned, selling directly to consumers in a subscription box or subscription style, is that something you are looking to emulate, or is that something that you found people are looking for? Or could you tell us a bit more about that?
I think we've seen people's shopping habits change over the last year with COVID. So we've had 3 of our best ever months of online sales on our own website when they were peak lockdown periods. So what we learned from April, which was the first time we really saw this big spike in our online sales, was that it was actually a channel that could potentially work for us. I don't
Mm.
think it's ever going to be it won't even reach to be 10% of the business. We have put a little bit more effort into that area. We have made sure that our snacks are really visible on the likes of Amazon. We've always had really strong sales on Ocado. But I think when you see over the next 12 months, well and truly going into different categories, you
Mm.
will potentially see us having more of a stronger position in the online environment. And that has definitely been driven by the learnings that we've had over 2020.
Well, without giving too much away, what can we expect for the future?
You will see Well and Truly come out with 2 whole new ranges in 2 different categories over the next
Right.
12 months. We will also be extending some of our savory snacking ranges, and you will see us doing some sort of really exciting and big sort of brand work towards the end of 2021.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to that. Because my other company that I have, we're a production company, and a lot of the things that we do involves long hours. And my main priority is to give the crew enough kind of sugary snacks and also snacks in the kind of table so that they keep going. And like, it's all as directors, they're the ones who give me the biggest headaches. They're like, I want to have something either XYZ, or I'm not going to eat anything. So we have to make sure that we have a certain kind of stack of stuff, which includes the babies and also the wine gums, that kind of thing. And one of the things that we do buy is Well and Truly. So that's how it all kind of came about. And I was thinking, who can we interview that's interesting and has gone on a journey which is very, very similar to us? I want to go back to Maria and her relationship with how she broke down, Tesco's in a way. From the sounds of it, she had an existing relationship from her previous company. Could you tell us a bit more about how you managed to persuade your first customer? It's easy to get relationships where you can have a conversation with someone or a coffee, but how did she persuade them to actually part way with money and actually say, here is a substantial order that's going to keep you busy, and, take that risk on you?
Yeah. So I just want to clarify. So she knew how Tesco's worked.
Okay.
Obviously, she'd been at L'Oreal, so she had been sort of in cosmetics. So
Hmm.
the buyers are very different to the
Departments, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So she didn't have a relationship with our buyer, but she just knew how to set up things within Tesco's. So what we did was we spent quite a lot of time crafting an email that we felt was really hitting to the point of some of the challenges that Tesco's were currently experiencing in the free from aisle, which is where we were trying to get our products. We were really lucky that we pitched products that the buyer didn't have in her range.
Hmm.
And she was actually looking for it. So at that time in the range, they had a lot of sort of staple products like sort of flours and bread mixes, a lot of biscuits and sweet treats, but very few or next to none savory snacks. And she had been looking for a tortilla chip that was gluten free and lower in fat and with all natural ingredients. So I hate to say it, but we were just lucky that we sent her this email that had a product that she was looking for at the time. In terms of then persuading her and encouraging her that we were the right people, because she could obviously go and ask Walkers or somebody else to produce a product for her. They would probably do that. But she really believed in our story. We had several meetings with her. We got on really well with her. She understood where we wanted to take the brand. She felt that we were going to add excitement to her fixture and potentially bring in new and different shoppers. And that was a really key metric for her. And that's what we've done. And we've been trading with them over the last 4 years.
Wow. I want to go back to what you mentioned, luck. I think, only founders and kind of entrepreneurs know that, yes, there's serendipity and luck. But my personal idea is that, it's a cliche to say, but, you do create your own luck. And by that, you can even mathematically say, look, let's say you talk to 10 people and you get 9 rejections, but, you get one person who says yes. But you have to go through the same enthusiasm that you did with like rejection number 8 or rejection number 9, and then you get the success. Funny enough, my first customer was also Tesco's. Like I used to be a lot more kind of braver and a lot more ballsy. I think I went to a conference where it was like 80, 90 people, and it was a whole day conference, and one of the people who was there was the CEO of F&F Clothing, who had literally just landed from China, speaking to suppliers or whatever. He landed in, and he was just about to leave, and I actually waited at the door just because I knew that he would have to leave somewhere, and everyone was trying to grab his attention, whereas I was actually just literally next to the door, pretending to be smoking or just kind of hanging around with the coffee. And then as he was leaving, I said, "Hey, listen, can I have 2 minutes with you?" And this is 2 weeks into my company. I just literally set up a website and an email address. And I said, "Look, I loved your talk. I was inspired by it. And I thought I would just have this 2 minute with you because I've just set up my company." I didn't want to bullshit him because I knew that he'd be able to see that right through me. And I just said to him straight up, "Look, I've just set up this company. It can do this. It can do this. We have no customers, but if you give us a chance, then we will deliver for you." And it took me 3 months to secure the meeting with his PA. Then I went to his, the fancy offices in Tesco's. It was probably the biggest office I've ever seen. And, it was just like, I was in Tesco's and there I was like 2 weeks ago. It was just a website that I built on WordPress, and it kind of all happened. And, luck, you can say, yeah, like it could have gone nowhere. But the fact that you kind of take risks and, like kind of just see what happens, you got nothing to lose. I think that's the kind of luck that you create. I mean, that's what I think.
No, I'd have to agree with you 100%. I mean, throughout our whole journey of Well and Truly, I can't tell you how many emails that we've sent to buyers, and only a very small handful of those have we actually had yeses back. Most of them get ignored, or you get a no back, a rejection, and that's definitely difficult to deal with, especially when you've sweated and put so much effort into building a brand that you think is right for the market and you can't get it.
I want to go back to the first thing we spoke about. The moment you saw your snacks on the shelves, that must have been a high for both of you. And we as entrepreneurs know that, you start off on a high during the day, but then you get incredible lows, and then you got to it's like a cycle of ups and downs. Could you tell us about some of the lows that you faced as a company and as a duo?
Yeah. Oh, there have been so many. Where to start? So
this is what founders go through, isn't it?
Yes, definitely. I think one of our first big lows was that it was probably 2 months after we'd got into Tesco's. We were starting to service some other customers, and they were requiring deliveries not on pallets but in cases. And we had selected a warehouse, and we were having errors come back to us all the time. We were getting fined that the cases weren't being delivered in the time slot that was needed, and it was just proving to be a complete nightmare. So we realized quite quickly that we had to move warehouse. So that was a costly, in terms of cash and also time, maneuver for us to do. But luckily, the second warehouse that we picked for Well and Truly has been our partner ever since. But that was a very difficult time for us. The second really big low, I would say, was that we worked on an equity fundraise with a venture capital firm for 6 months. We incurred quite significant legal costs. The day before the contract was due to be signed, they decided to pull the plug. So not only was that a blow to us because of the legal costs that we'd incurred, all the time over the 6 months that had gone into negotiating the deal, but also the cash poor position that it left Well and Truly in overnight, whereas we were expecting to receive 500,000 the following day. But what it enabled us to do was, it was probably the lowest that we've ever been in terms of the stress levels, the challenges that we were having. But Maria and I really came together during this part and put our heads together and said, right, well, we want Well and Truly to continue to exist. How can we keep the company going? We streamlined the business. We took out a lot of inefficiencies that we found. Maria and I became accountants overnight. We went through the books to find out where every single penny was being spent, where we could cut costs, making sure that we were still investing in sales and marketing, which is what grows the brand and Well and Truly. And we managed to come out of that. And I think we came out of it actually a much stronger business and a much stronger co-founders.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you say that, because I was reading this book and it basically said, you know, there's the Parkinson's law said dictates the deadline that I give you to complete a task, you will take that much time to actually finish it. And I was saying to my colleague, you know, like, where the budget I give you to do something, you will actually fill it to actually create something. So if I give you a 10K to make the website, then you'll probably spend 10K to do it. Whereas if I were to give you £250, then you have to be very creative. From the story that you mentioned, you know, these are the things that we go through on a monthly basis, and there's millions of these other stories as well. What did you find from that exercise of, okay, what can we truly live without versus what can we actually expend? And if you were to look back at those decisions that you'd made, could you pinpoint what were, you know, those actual eureka moments were for two of you?
I think bringing the accountancy in-house was a really big one for us. So we had outsourced a lot of that, and I think it wasn't giving us enough control. So now Maria and I go through every single invoice. We will make every single payment that goes out through Well and Truly. So we have a really granular level of detail of information on all of the finances and the cash flow within Well and Truly, which is probably the biggest challenge that any founder will have, making sure that you have enough cash within the company. We worked really hard at extending and negotiating payment terms with all of our suppliers. We put in place some invoice financing, which was enabling us to get the cash earlier from some of our suppliers. The big supermarkets actually were really helpful. They gave us great payment terms, so at the end of the whole exercise, we were managing to basically be cash positive. And then by stripping out unnecessary costs, we were starting to turn a profit straight away, which is really rare for a startup in sort of, you know, the first few years of life.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing is, I attend a few when we couldn't go to networking events. I'd go to a few of these things where, to be honest with you, I've spent a decade in B2B and, you know, sales, which involves not selling anything physically, but just, you know, that softwares or services. So I'm discovering, you know, people like yourself who actually sell physical products. And this is a tough game in terms of, you know, like actually securing a buyer, but also making sure that you have the right percentage from your buyer, supplier, making sure everything happens. But the lessons that you've learned are so universal in terms of, I could take that on and say, yeah, this is the kind of issues that we have in terms of, okay, we have suppliers, we have customers, make sure that customer pays before supplier invoices, make sure the invoices are the right kind of line. You know, like, what advice would you give to someone else looking to get into, you know, FMCG, and, you know, or even like yourselves when you were in that bar in Soho, you know, and you could whisper to them and say, hey, you could only say 3 things to them maybe, or, you know, maybe very, very succinct. What would you say to them yourself?
I would definitely say, make sure you have a co-founder, because getting through those lows, it makes it so much better. I think you end up with a better proposition, a better product, a better brand if there are 2 of you that can constantly challenge each other rather than just one person making all the decisions. I would say make sure that you really believe in your product, that you stress test it, whether it's with your friends or network, and you make sure that you launch something that you're really proud of and that is addressing some form of a need, because that's going to make your whole pitching story to the buyer much easier, more likely for them to say, yes, we're going to take it. And then I would say tap into the entrepreneurial network wherever you are. So we have really leaned heavily on some great founders in London, within snacking as well, because everybody within that space, they all want to be giving back. So I regularly have chats with people that drop me an email saying that they're looking to set up their own startup, and they just want some sort of advice or contacts. And I'm always more than happy to share that, because just by one person giving you a useful contact could save you sort of days of researching when you don't know who to go to. And there are so many different networking events, and just speaking to somebody that is in the space that you're looking to go into can be really, really valuable.
In terms of, like what you mentioned, just going back to the previous thing, when you did the streamlining exercise, or, when you did that thing where you said that these are the things that we cannot live without, was there anything that surprised you in terms of, that we didn't expect this or anticipate this to have such a good return of investment?
I think we ended up using many more sort of online tools. So we have a whole software that we use for cash flow management. We use a different one for all of our accountancy. We have a different one that helps with all of our logistics. So instead of having all these things outsourced, we've kind of brought it in-house and made it all online. And I think that has helped us really maintain control over the company and reduce the cost.
No, these are the kind of things that people don't, entrepreneurs don't really talk about, when like the whole Gary V kind of thing, go for it. Whereas the reality is I'm spending so much time on zero and working out, what the hell is this money? Why did I spend this? Or, how much for the career? Why don't we just get it posted? This little things like that take up my time, and not really what I started this company with. From the sounds of it, you have a very supportive kind of family, as well as kind of network of people that you can rely on or talk to for advice. Did you have someone within your family that was an entrepreneur that was like an inspiration, or do you have someone within your, like, when you were growing up that you kind of looked up to, or your inspiration?
So there's no entrepreneur in my family. They've all worked in sort of big corporate companies. I think I always looked up to my father. He worked really, really hard. He was always happy. He always saw the positive side of things. He always gave more than he got, I guess. He instilled a lot of values that I live by today. And I think it's enabled me to become a better leader and create a fantastic team. And we wouldn't be where we are today with Well and Truly without the amazing people that we've employed and that work for us. And they bring so much energy, grafting, grit and determination into the business. And I think it keeps us on our toes and keeps us at the forefront of the savory snacking market.
Nice. Who was your first hire outside of the duo, the dynamic duo, I guess? And how, was it an emotional decision for you to say, yep, we need someone to come in and help us?
It was actually out of necessity. So Maria ended up being pregnant in the first year of Well and Truly. So she was obviously going to have a bit of time off to welcome her son into the world. So we needed to bring in a sort of head of sales to come and support me. So we hired a girl called Liz, and she had come from FMCG background, and she came in and joined and Truly. Maria only had a short time off with her son, but subsequently over the sort of last 4 years, we've actually, between the two of us, had a baby every single year. So it's just been part of the parcel of Well and Truly, being entrepreneurs and being new mums as well.
The thing is, as an entrepreneur, you're in the kind of most equal opportunity employer that, employment you can ever get. But I guess for female founders, like you have the extra kind of, not, you have the, wanting to have a baby versus going back and focusing on your business. But it's good that you have someone who kind of is in the journey with you. And yeah, it's something I would like to eventually, have, but I don't need to go out and take time out for my business. I will when the baby comes, but that's something in my plan. And I think this is something I would like to explore with you, but maybe at a different podcast, because I don't want to kind of preach and, talk about something I'll never face in the way that women would. Although it's a very important topic, I don't want to just gloss over it. I want to go back to, are there any business books or films that have inspired you and, or, kept you kind of thinking, yep, this person or this person's, the journey they're going on is something I can identify with?
Well, obviously I'm a huge fan of mountains and the outdoor life. So the founder of Patagonia has always been a big inspiration for me. He wrote a book saying, "Let my people go surfing." A lot of values within that we have replicated and brought over into Well and Truly in terms of the flexibility of where people can work. So even before COVID, Maria and I would have sort of remote working, and the whole team were doing that as well. In terms of the way that we choose to have sort of like team building days. We would pick a city within Europe and we would all go there and do these fun activities. Over in 2020, a marketing executive actually moved down to Brighton, not Brighton, down to Cornwall, so that she could surf in the mornings and in the evenings before and after work. We were completely happy with that. So definitely bringing some of those values from Patagonia into the business. And then another book that I'm a huge fan of is the one by the founder of Nike. And his story is just incredible in terms of all of the chance happenings and how, some of the big lows that he actually ended up with and some of the lucky, I guess, creative decisions that he made to end up having such a strong brand. And I could see some of those similarities in Well and Truly. We've tried to make sure that we've got really strong relationships with the factories that we work with. And they've really helped us sort of come up with new and exciting, innovative product ideas. So making sure that those relationships are really solid has been really important to us. And then sort of, some of the chance things that happened to us in terms of the brand. We came across a fantastic brand guy that had an agency. He decided that he wanted to do some work for us free of charge. And they kind of came up with some of the strongest branding that we've now gone live with, which is all about being sort of a slightly naughty-ish campaign. And we're going to continue working with them for the foreseeable future. So I think it's just trying to make the most of every single opportunity that you get. And those two people really inspired me.
Nice. I mean, I was looking at the Gemma Collins video. I love it. It's
Yes.
it's distinctive. Like you could tell it was just all kind of, it's the kind of video I expected you guys to create. It's like kind of fun, but also a bit cheeky and naughty snack, but without all the naughties, I guess. From the day you started to where you are now, you learn every day as a business person, I guess. What has been some of your best learnings to date? I know this is a really big question, but what's the first thing that comes to mind when someone says to you, what's the best thing you've learned?
I would say probably raise more cash than you think you need, especially if you're in food and drink or an FMCG, because you're always going to need more. And don't be afraid to do something different, specifically when it comes to branding. So when we first launched, we had this quite sort of really clean, I guess quite Swedish white packaging. And through sort of over the first year, we realized it wasn't really working as hard as it should have. We then briefed an agency and they came back to us saying, well, you need to go black. And we were like, oh, that is such a departure from where we had originally imagined the brand being. But again, I definitely had probably a whole week of sleepless nights tossing and turning whether that was the right decision. And we did it. And then we saw a 300% increase in like-for-like sales. So it was definitely the right decision.
In terms of, that's the first thing I remember, like when I first approached you, I could almost like imagine your crisps in the shelves because it was like it's black, but also it kind of stood out amongst all the other stuff that's usually there. And even when I was preparing for this, I was like, yeah, it's Well and Truly. It kind of sticks in my mind. So whoever did that, they did good job. In terms of the future, how do you see yourself and Maria? I know that you're going to be launching new things, but as entrepreneurs, like what's your kind of exit or your plan for the future?
Yeah, we have always set out to exit Well and Truly at some point because both Maria and I have huge passion for coming up with the brand, with the products, so the beginning phases. We've still got a long way to go before we're ready to start looking at an exit strategy because we have so many products we want to launch, so much of the brand we want to get out there. But you will see Well and Truly continuing to grow and going into exciting categories. And hopefully you will see us exit. And then I'm sure that you'll see both Maria and I launching something else.
What are the kind of brands within your sector that you look at? Like it doesn't have to be in the UK or it doesn't have to be in the healthy sector. What kind of brands do you keep an eye on that kind of you think, oh, this is pretty cool?
Oatly would be up there. I mean, they really challenged a status quo in a really sort of stale category, and they've done a phenomenal job. I think their messaging, the branding, everything they do is incredible. I would also say the Collective Dairy, they did a great job in terms of coming out with some really unique yogurts. So I think those would be the two that we constantly look at and aspire to be as strong as they are in terms of companies.
Cool. The other question, the next thing for you, whenever that timescale may be, will it be within the FMCG sector, or will you go back and do something different, like maybe some things that you guys worked on when you were working for other people?
I think I will definitely probably remain within FMCG. Could it potentially be more of an online play? Maybe. I mean, that whole space is changing so rapidly, and I think people's shopping habits have changed over 2020, and I think they will remain changed. So tapping into some of the newer trends that are going to be coming out over the next few years, I think will be really interesting.
So you are like OGs for life for FMCG. Yeah. Final question, how can people find you and how can people get in contact with you?
They can find on our website. There's an email address at the end of that. If they address it to me, then it will come to me. Or we're also on all the social media channels. And if you address something to me on any of those, it will get passed on to me.
Cool. You're on LinkedIn as well.
And I'm on LinkedIn as well, definitely.
Good. I'm super excited to have had this conversation. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest in an unknown and unpublished podcast. We will continue to buy Well and Truly snacks for the entire squad, especially for productions, and I'll make sure that we tag you on all our Instagram. I'm really excited to see what else you're going to be launching in the journey, but thank you so much, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. It was great chatting to you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.